Hi, welcome everyone. I'm here today with Dr. Hans Vink. First off, my friend and colleague, and you also happen to be the world's leading glycocalyx researcher. You've published more than 250 papers on the glycocalyx, and you've been cited in more than 16,000 citations. And of course, you are creator of the GlycoCheck device, a non-invasive, revolutionary device that measures the health of your microcirculation by measuring your endothelial glycocalyx health. Today, we're talking about an area that's foundational for all of us, and that's how oxygen and nutrients move through the very smallest vessels in our body, especially when the demand is high, like during training or competition. And this conversation is purely educational. We're not making claims that you're going to become the best athlete ever. But instead, we're really looking at the fascinating biology that underlies that endurance, recovery, and resilience. So, Dr. Vink, I know you've got a lot of information. I will let you have at it.
Well, thank you, Joelyn. It's my pleasure to share some of our data with you today. Today, I just want to focus on helping people understand that we have a microvascular system that's crucial to take nutrients and oxygen to your muscles for performance. And then to keep these microvessels healthy, there is something inside that we call glycocalyx. And I'll show you that in a little bit more in detail, what that is and how important it is, also for performance. And then I'll show you some performance and exercise data just to underline the importance of the microvasculature. So let me start sharing some of my slides with you. So what this slide shows is two images of the cardiovascular system. And the image on the left-hand side, most people know that you have a heart that pumps blood in your large arteries, that takes the blood to your organs and extremities, and your veins taking the blood back to the heart. But not everybody knows is when the blood gets into those organs, like in your muscle, in order to be able to deliver the nutrients and the oxygen to your muscle cells and to take away the waste products and the CO2, those large arteries branch multiple times into smaller and smaller vessels until they're so small you need a microscope to see them, and they're called microscopic capillaries. So those are the vessels where all the delivery of the nutrients happen, and you need many of those to keep your muscle for optimal performance. And if you look at one of those individual capillaries, how they actually look like, well, this is one live capillary muscle tissue. They're tiny, tiny. So the diameter is only about 5 microns, which is so small that red blood cells need to go through these vessels one by one. They need to be squeezed to fit in the tube, and they flow one by one in the center of the tube. And when I started looking at these small capillaries, decades ago, we realized that they're never touching the wall. The red cells never touch the inner lining of the wall. And it turns out inside that gap between where blood cells are flowing and the wall of these microvessels, there is this transparent gel that turns out to be crucial to keep your microvessels healthy and also crucial for optimal sports performance. So I'll show you a picture what's inside that gap between the red cells and the wall. Again, this is a cross section of a capillary blood vessel in muscle tissue. And on the right-hand side, the same vessel at the higher magnification. So on top is where red cells are flowing. This is the vessel wall lining called the endothelial cell. And on top of the endothelium, you have these three-dimensional extensive polysaccharide matrix made of complex molecules called heparan sulfate and hyaluronic acid. And that matrix we call glycocalyx. So it's a part of the vessel wall. Turns out it occupies a lot of the volume in your microvessels, and a lot of your plasma proteins that are important for vascular health bind within that matrix. So one of the important functions of this matrix is that it senses how fast blood is flowing through your microvessels. And when it senses that and blood starts flowing faster, like when you start doing exercise, that faster flowing blood shears over those structures, tells your vessel wall, well, something's happening, and then your vessels start producing important healthy molecules like nitric oxide that further increase blood flow and help you to supply more nutrients and oxygen to your muscle cells when necessary when you start doing exercise. So this is just one example of a study that we did. This is two kinds of vessels, on top with a thick glycocalyx, on the bottom with a thin glycocalyx. and on the horizontal axis is blood flow. So when blood flow increases from a low resting level to higher levels during exercise, if you have a healthy vessel with a healthy glycocalyx inside, then together with the increase in blood flow, you see a proportional increase in nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is an important molecule that helps your muscle to get more blood and more nutrients and more oxygen when you start doing exercise. And when for some reason your glycocalyx is compromised, and it can get compromised by aging or by being exposed to a bad lifestyle, no exercise or smoking or diabetes, for instance, when your glycocalyx is compromised, well, initially the blood flow can still go up, but you don't produce nitric oxide, which doesn't facilitate more nutrient delivery to your muscle. So you get tired sooner and you cannot perform as well when that glycocalyx is compromised. Just one more example of another study, just showing I'm not the only one doing these studies. A study by a group by John Tarbell. And again, it shows when you look over time and the top line is your blood vessels that have been exposed to increasing blood flow, you start producing more nitric oxide. And if you take off your glycocalyx, that's the line with the crosses here on the bottom, over time you don't produce as much nitric oxide when you take off your glycocalyx. So that's one important protective function of glycocalyx and helps your muscles to perform when blood flow increases. Another important aspect of glycocalyx is that make sure you don't damage and lose all of your small capillaries where all of the exchange of nutrients happens. So this is one example of a study. On the bottom, glycocalyx was damaged. And then we counted how many capillaries are still blood perfused when your glycocalyx is damaged. So FCD stands for functional capillary density. This is now in an acute setting, for instance, during an acute infection. We counted how many capillaries are still being perfused, and you go down from 100% to like 50 to 60% in an acute setting when you get an infection. For instance, like, endotoxin, when you get like a sepsis bacterial infection. Uh, while in a more realistic setting, we get the same thing, you lose a lot of capillaries with, for instance, aging, of obesity. So this is just counting the number of capillaries relative to a low-risk group of healthy young individuals. And the orange are people at medium risk, or in red, people at higher risk for future cardiovascular complications because of lifestyle again, or smoking, or obesity. And realize you can lose up to 50% of your small capillaries when that happens. And you need all your capillaries to deliver an increased supply of nutrients and oxygen when blood flow goes up. So you need both. You need an increase in blood flow and you need your capillaries to take all the nutrients that are in the blood to your muscle to improve your performance. Well, another important property of glycocalyx, so in addition to triggering nitric oxide, maintaining a decent number of capillaries, is that your microvascular system is also very dynamic and adapts to conditions. So if you look at this schematic, this is a healthy microvascular system, and on the left-hand side, under resting conditions before you start doing exercise. And it shows that there's 3 capillaries, but only 2 out of 3 capillaries are actually blood perfused under resting conditions, because you don't need all your capillaries under resting conditions. You have a minimal demand for oxygen. You only need 2 out of 3. So there's 1 reserve capillary under resting conditions. On the right-hand side, when you start exercising and that glycocalyx triggers more production of nitric oxide and blood flow goes up, and together with an increase in blood flow, not only the flow goes up to those capillaries, but also more capillaries are now blood perfused. So together with an increase in blood flow and an increased supply of oxygen and nutrients, also your exchange system, so where all the transport takes place between the blood compartment and your muscle cells, there's more capillaries being recruited if you have a healthy glycocalyx. While in contrast, if you have a compromised system, not only blood flow is a bit lower, but even under resting conditions, you already have fewer capillaries, so less capacity to exchange nutrients, but also those reserve capillaries are no longer present. So you cannot recruit more capillaries when blood flow goes up. So even when you start exercising and blood flow can still go up a little bit, you don't have additional capillaries to help you to bring all that extra oxygen nutrients to your muscle. So you don't have the benefit of the increased blood flow. It doesn't help your muscle to form better. So with all this background information, we were interested if it really makes a difference in exercise. So there's two studies I would like to share with you. One study is a study that people did using the GlycoCheck device that we've developed to measure the health of your microvascular system. And they looked at, well, is your health of your glycocalyx and how many capillaries you have really making a difference in how you can perform, the level of performance. And the second thing to look into is if you start doing an exercise training schedule, and this they used a high intensity interval training for 4 weeks, can you improve the health of your microvasculature and the health of your glycocalyx? And does that improvement of the health of your microvasculature indeed also give you better performance? So that's one study. And another study that I would like to finish with is a study that looked in the nitric oxide boosting capacity of the Revasca supplement that we've developed. And if you use that, before you start doing your exercise training, if it actually can help you perform better immediately, and it can delay when you are getting tired, and so you can pushing much longer when you have, your boost of blood flow in your microvascular system. So let's start with the first study first. So this is that high intensity interval training study that I mentioned. So they had 4 weeks of exercise training to look at the health of your microvasculature before and your performance. And after the 4 weeks of training, they also looked what changed. Did the microvascular health change? And also did that correlate to increased performance? So these are some data slides. So start with the one on the left. This is one about the health of your glycocalyx and how that relates to your performance levels. So each little dot is one athlete, and just at baseline, they measured the level of glycocalyx damage. So the lower the better. And does that correlate with your running performance levels? How fast can people run during a running exercise? And actually showed there's a negative relationship. So less damage, which is a good thing. So we like, lower level of damage correlates with better running performance. So the ones with the most healthy glycocalyx could run faster than other ones. Well, another measurement that they did is look now after the 4 weeks of exercise, what changed with your glycocalyx, and did that also correlate with the change in your performance? And again, it did. It shows, well, the people that have a reduction in the level of their glycocalyx damage. So again, this is your delta glycocalyx change, delta glycocalyx damage change. So a negative value means that your glycocalyx has become better and healthier. And on the horizontal axis is your improvement in the level of performance. And against the one that showed the best increase in their glycocalyx health or more reduction in glycocalyx damage are also the ones that improved their running performance better than others. And then again, on the right-hand side, they looked at capillary density. How many microvessels do you have? And it shows that the ones that as a result of the training interval over 4 weeks improved their numbers of capillaries the most were also the ones that improved their running performance levels the most. So, in summarizing that study, if you have a healthier glycocalyx, you perform better. If after your training, your exercise, you improve your health of your glycocalyx, that also improves your running performance. And the same, if you have more microvessels after your training exercise, then also your performance will go up. Well, what's interesting was in this slide on the right-hand side that not everybody responded the same. So one thing that I checked is maybe it has something to do with genetics. And we know there is some epigenetic markers that you can measure that are triggered. So your genetic system is triggered by exercise, and to see if some people have a bigger response to that exercise training than others. And the graph on the right-hand side shows on the horizontal axis, after the first exercise interval at the beginning of the first week, the measured blood levels of a epigenetic exercise marker called miRNA 143. So that's a marker that in some way gives a clue about your genetics, how well your genetics responds to exercise, and can it help you improve your training performance and training results? Well, it shows the ones that have the biggest increase in blood levels of that epigenetic exercise marker after the first training boost are also the ones that show the biggest improvement or reduction in glycocalyx damage. So some people are, genetically predisposed to respond better than others in response to the exercise. And the reason they perform better to exercise is also they have a better improvement in their glycocalyx health. Well, and to finish the data on the exercise, this is the other study that I talked about
Mhm.
the polyphenols that are in the Revasca supplement. So in addition to improving the health of your glycocalyx, improving the numbers of small capillaries, the Revasca supplement also increases nitric oxide levels and by the polyphenols. And this study, they gave the supplement the night before an exercise and also an hour before they started doing exercise. And they measured how long can they keep performing these athletes before they get really exhausted and have to stop the exercise. So this is in seconds. So with the polyphenols in the Revasca supplement or without, there is about a 2 to 3 minute difference. So instead of like 20 minutes going full strength, taking the supplement allows you to go on for 2 or 3 minutes longer. So this is for exhaustion, and similarly, time to reach the maximal perceived exertion. So we can get maximal performance levels. Again, there's about a 2 3 minutes level improvement if you start taking the supplement. So it helps you to improve blood flow to your muscles, keep your microvasculature healthy, and allow you to perform at a higher level much longer if you take the supplement. So I hope that overview gives you some idea why the microvasculature is really important for muscle performance, how important glycocalyx is to improve nitric oxide levels, improve blood flow, keep your capillaries healthy, and also be able to perform much longer during an exercise protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. That was fantastic. I'll give a little clap there. And even that last slide, athletes are looking for even those smallest gains. So when you're talking about a 2 minute difference, that's tremendous. And in fact, we do have testimonials, especially in the athletic community, of people saying, my VO2 max has improved, just a tremendous increase. They're hitting that, zone 2 faster, zone 3 faster. And so it's really been quite popular. And these slides, I'll give a quick recap in case anybody wants to go further into that. But it really underpins how our bodies handle stress and that demand, and some of the other ways we can support that vascular resilience. So essentially, we've got those very smallest 4, 5, and 6 micron microcapillaries, and those are so important for that oxygen and nutrient delivery, and then also getting that waste product out of the tissue there. Um, when we think about stress and demand, of course, I know, we've talked about aging and lifestyle factors. For those athletes who are really just pushing their bodies, we see that in professional athletes where their measures of inflammation are a little bit higher. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, clearly. So in addition to being crucial in helping you produce more nitric oxide, glycocalyx also protects you against inflammatory challenges. So that glycocalyx matrix, and the way it protects your vascular system against inflammation, is that it not only keeps the red blood cells away from the vessel wall, it also keeps blood platelets for blood clotting and leukocytes, the inflammatory cells, the immune system cells, away from the vessel wall so they cannot stick, they cannot cause local vascular inflammatory responses. So if you keep that glycocalyx healthy, regardless of the stress you're under, we know the professional athletes push their bodies all the time. So they're at very high risk of getting all kinds of you know, um, inflammation related challenges and diseases. So they have to be very careful. So a healthy glycocalyx helps your vascular system to stay healthy. It keeps your immune cells away from the vessel wall so they cannot stick, cannot cause inflammation. and also prevents other side effects of the exercise, like leakage of fluids and edema formation. Of course, that glycocalyx also keeps your water inside your vascular system. It prevents leakage of proteins and water. So it helps prevent the swelling that you can get after a couple of hours of tough exercise. So yeah, in addition to functional benefits, it also protects your system against the downsides of all that excess training and keeps your body healthy and lowers the level of inflammation.
Yeah. Yep. And that level of inflammation, you had mentioned on there that PBR. So what the glycocheck device measures, one of those measures is the perfused boundary region, exactly as you said, is how far into that endothelial lining do those red blood cells impact. And I think this has really been a phenomenal talk. This has been phenomenal information for athletes because so often you think, well, I'm doing the work, I'm, cycling, I'm running, I'm exercising, therefore I must be healthy. I must have a healthy, vascular system. And people, especially athletes, aren't understanding how nitric oxide is actually produced in your system over with that blood shear. And then also the factors that inflammation can have on your body that are on the negative side. So this has been fantastic. I mean,
Well,
just
like yeah, and just to add what you do, underline what you're saying, with the glycocheck device, we can easily measure in an individual how many capillaries you have, how healthy your glycocalyx is by measuring if the red cells indeed stay away at a certain distance from the vessel wall, because when glycocalyx are breaking down, they get closer and closer to the wall, and that is our measure of glycocalyx damage, or PBR, as you mentioned. And we did do one study in a professional cyclist team once, and actually we were surprised to see under how much stress the vascular system is of these professional athletes. So their level of glycocalyx damage was already significant. So they need all the care to prevent further damage, and adding therapeutics like the Revasca that's designed to improve that glycocalyx definitely is expected to help recover faster and perform better.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so I will just say thank you so much. This has been fantastic. The study you had mentioned, we'll link that in the show notes. We'll also link a MACE study that you had done, taken part in on 600 individuals. We'll go into that. I'll link the video with your overview on that MACE study because that's just an incredible study. Too much to discuss on this call, but thank you so much. This has been an
You're
insightful
welcome.
conversation, and I hope people understand that knowing that biology, that underlying biology of how your body's performing, is just as important as a training regimen. And we will link that information in the show notes below. And then also, if you're interested in Revasca, as Dr. Vink mentioned, it's our nutraceutical that is designed to support that glycocalyx, that healthy glycocalyx. We'll also put details on Revasca and its ingredients. Its main ingredient is fucoidan seaweed. Just so many phenomenal benefits to Revasca. So if you have any other questions, you can email support@glycocalyx.com, support@glycocalyx.com. You can look at Dr. Vink's background there that has it as well. And thank you so much. And you can also use the code BOGO if you are ordering Revasca. You can put 2 bottles in your cart, enter the discount code BOGO, and you magically get it for one. Low price of 1 bottle. We also do have auto ship discounts, and we are looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks so much.